So when the avoidant pulls away, the anxious attachment style or more anxious leaning partner in the relationship usually has the first instinct to chase, to close that gap, to maintain proximity, to make sure that the person doesn't abandon you or pull away further. But if you're anxiously attached, actually chasing an avoidant only tends to make them retreat even further away. And unless you know what to do instead, you'll often find yourself continuously repeating the same painful dynamic every time they go cold. And from the dismissive avoidance point of view, it's also important that they recognize their side of these behaviors in the anxious avoidant trap. So when the avoidant pulls away, don't panic. It's just time to pivot. And the way you respond in this moment will determine whether or not this connection grows or collapses. And this goes for both individuals in this dynamic. So today, we are going to unpack the typical anxious avoidant trap, some of the themes and patterns, and most importantly, what to do to get this situation out of being on the rocks and into much smoother territory for the future of your dynamic. So I'm going to read you out this dynamic first, okay? And then we're going to break down piece by piece together. So first part, anxious, preoccupied, and dismissive avoidant meet perhaps on a dating app. Things are going really, really well. They're connecting, they're getting along. And then after a couple dates, the dismissive avoidant starts to pull back and they're slightly less available. And the anxious preoccupied person doesn't understand why. And then what happens is as the DA is retreating, the anxious preoccupied starts panicking, fearing that they did something wrong, feeling like they haven't had enough of an opportunity to really connect. And maybe if the person just saw me more or knew me more, we could strengthen that bond. If we just had more time to bond, we would work through this together. And the more the anxious preoccupied comes towards the dismissive avoidant, the more the DA tends to trail off. And the anxious preoccupied just doesn't know what's leading to this and feels really frustrated and rejected and often defeated by this dynamic. So I want to go through each step. The very first step that's really interesting here, and this is like our first invisible step, is things seem to be going along very, very well for the AP and DA. And then all of a sudden, the DA retreats. Why is this happening? Well, there tend to be root core causes for this in this step. And one of the very first ones is that sometimes when the dismissive avoidant feels a lot of feelings quite quickly, their feelings scare them. DAs are always operating in this sort of like teeter-totter between their feelings minus their fears. And when those fears come online, fears of being vulnerable or having to move too quickly or commit to something and then being hurt, opening themselves up and seeming weak, letting somebody in and somebody seeing their imperfections and flaws and then them feeling defective or ashamed. These things are very scary for dismissive avoidance. And because they don't tend to historically have a lot of their subconscious programs that get their needs met through human relationships, and most so they've learned to get their needs met very independently through themselves, their creature comforts, perhaps work, belongings, hobbies, these other areas they invest themselves in to fill their own cups. We often see that when the fears come up, DAs pull back quite quickly. Now, APs, anxious preoccupied individuals, we are all, as human beings, all attachment styles, giving off a lot more messaging to each other than we realize. And this is because at any given moment, when we're, let's say, sitting on a date, our conscious mind is picking up roughly 40 to 60 bits per second of information, while our subconscious and unconscious collectively are storing and picking up about 1 billion bits per second of information. And only some of that's really making it to our full conscious awareness. So we may realize things very quickly that are leaving certain impressions on us. Let's say somebody, leans in a lot during the date and is very present and is really maintaining eye contact and asking a lot of questions and super interested. To a DA, for example, that may feel more vulnerable than the AP person is realizing. It can be these little subtleties in what's happening that while there can be a nice engagement at the time and the dismissive avoidant might be present and these sorts of things later on, their fears may kick in and be like, oh, the conscious mind didn't hear their anxious, preoccupied person they were on a date with say, are you ready to be in a relationship tomorrow? But the subconscious and unconscious mind sort of gain this impression from people's micro expressions, body language, tone of voice, length of time they maintain eye contact, shifts in, the way that somebody's facing you or not. Like there's all these different things that are leaving an impression. And oftentimes dating's going really well. And then the DA will get this impression like, oh, this person really wants a relationship right away. And as soon as that impression imprints their subconscious mind, they'll usually start to have those fears kick in. And they may start thinking things like, oh, I'm really interested and the person's great, but they want to move faster than me. And you may have never even said that, but that may be what that person's coming up and experiencing. Okay. So there's that very direct way. Obviously that indirect way. The direct way can be that the AP also says something in passing, like, I'm really ready for a relationship right now. And even if the DA is really attracted to the AP, thinks that they're great, it really is a weighing of their feelings and their fears and what's really taking place. So then we see the DA retreat, right? They sort of have this impression at some point. They may retreat, their fears kick in, and they sort of pull back and hold back. And then the anxious preoccupied, when they fear being abandoned, usually the DA goes into avoidance oriented behaviors, and the AP tends to be an approach oriented behavior person. So they tend to be like, okay, they have their activating strategies. The DA has the deactivating strategies. And the AP will usually think thoughts and really rationalize it to themselves too. They'll think thoughts like, if they just knew me more, if they were bonded more to me, if we had time to really get to know each other better. And so they'll try to close that gap and maintain that proximity by doing activating things, right? Calling more, texting more, showing up more. And that's their response. Whereas the DA usually is more likely to come back around if they actually have a moment to feel like the pressure's off. And then they may even logically or rationally be like, oh, well, they didn't say they needed to be in a relationship in like 2 weeks. Maybe I have time. Maybe and so their fears will kind of like de-thaw if there's that space. So what instead usually happens is that space isn't there, and it just polarizes, right? It's almost like opposite ends of a magnet. The one polarizing end of the magnet comes here, and it just keeps pushing the other magnet this way. And so we'll see that the AP will try to get closer, which only seems to reinforce the dismissive avoidance fears in the situation and cause them to feel like they have to cope by backing away further. And then the hard part that happens to the AP is they usually feel rejected, and then their core wounds come online and tell them stories like, I'm not good enough. It's because I'm going to be rejected or always be rejected, or, I'm not interesting enough, or I'm not attractive enough. And we'll give all this meaning to situations when usually it's just a programming issue. It's the different types of programs between each other. Now, if you want to see a much deeper dive into all of this stuff, this is one of many examples. I have a whole course that illustrates all the different DA and AP dynamics. It's the relationship between the dismissive avoidant and anxious preoccupied person. And it goes into so much detail in 3 hours. I don't say this enough, but honestly, like, the amount of information I can put in like a 10-minute YouTube video versus like a 2.5-hour course, it gives you so much more information, worksheets, tools, how to get out of these situations. Like, it's so much more useful and supportive, and you can check it out for free for 7 days, which gives you time to go through that course by clicking the link below. So if you want to check that out, I'll leave that course in there. You can jump into the All Access Pass, which is where you can check it out for free. And you also get access to all these other community features in there. Like, I do 4 live calls each week with our students. We have all kinds of amazing social events with trained facilitators, and community, like, practice communication scripts, events, online dating routines, all kinds of really cool stuff. So anyways, I hope you check it out. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more breakdowns like this, please leave yours in the box below, and I'll go back through some of them and like pick out some of these situations and make videos about them, because it's really fun for me to break all these things down. And these are really strong patterns. Like, I just see these same types of things over and over and over again, but all these things are changeable when we actually understand the root cause of what's going on and what's taking place. So I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for being here and for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video.